welcome the Cabinet Secretary to her new post, to ask the Scottish Government what its response is to reports that Police Scotland call handlers used a fake system for 8 years.
Minister Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, and I'm grateful to Mr Rennie for laying this question. While this is a matter for Police Scotland, any suggestion that callers to Police Scotland were not having their calls properly prioritised is clearly unacceptable. I have assurances from Police Scotland that this historical practice was limited to a single regional force that is no longer in use anywhere in Scotland and hasn't been since 2015. Police Scotland call handling has been completely overhauled since the creation of a single national service, and policing continues to be a priority for this government.
Willie Rennie.
The Scottish Police Federation warned about the dumping of SCO6 calls at the time, so the government should have known about this. Back in 2015, I also raised the alarm repeatedly about the failings of the newly centralised Police Scotland. These systematic failings led to the tragic deaths of Lamara and John Yuill. But we were not told call handlers used a fake system with a fictitious call sign. It was used to hide the chaos, and anxious members of the public had their calls ignored. The call sign was dummy. So can I ask, did ministers or government officials know about call sign dummy?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, can I say very directly to Mr Rennie that I am not aware of any information that suggests ministers were advised of this at the time. In terms of the issue at hand here, my officials in Police Division have discussed this issue, as you would expect, directly with the relevant Police Scotland Division. And Police Scotland have stated that while the call sign existed, that it was used when calls were at a peak so they could be put into a holding system until they could be dealt with. Police Scotland do not believe that any calls were dropped to its use. That said, they are clear it is not an acceptable approach at this time. And with regards to the very tragic, painful, awful loss of life on the M9 that Mr Rennie refers to, can I also say directly to him that Police Scotland have given my officials categorical assurances that this historical issue is not related to the tragic death of Mr Yuill and Miss Bell. There is obviously a fatal accident inquiry with regards to that matter about to commence soon, and I can't at this stage add any further comment on that.
Willie Rennie.
I'm afraid this is the culture that has been established by this government. Spin and manipulate to avoid the truth coming out. This also lays bare the abject failure of governance. This should have been spotted by the Scottish Police Authority. So will the Minister now commit to wholesale reform of the governance arrangements for the police service?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I know and appreciate that when it comes to the creation of a single national police force, that Mr Rennie and I sit on different sides of the fence in this one. But I also hope, in terms of the contact that he has had me over a range of portfolios over a number of years, neither me nor Mr Rennie are new to this place, that he would accept and appreciate that I am very strong and focused on governance and accountability. I would also say that Police Scotland must be one of the most scrutinised public services in Scotland, and rightly so. And I would point to the fact that on issues in and around call handling, there have been several reports over the past recent years carried forth by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary for Scotland, several reports dating from 2015 with very clear recommendations that have been implemented with the most recent report in 2022, and I look forward to continuing to engage with Mr Rennie on this and many other matters.
Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I too would like to welcome the Cabinet Secretary to her new role. I recognise the call handling system in question is a legacy service that was permanently deleted in 2015. However, as the new Cabinet Secretary has just alluded to, this will be of little comfort to those who have been personally affected by these revelations. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, as she takes on her new post, what steps the Scottish Government will take going forward to ensure transparency, maintain public confidence and build increased public trust in policing?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I thank Ms Nicholl for her comments and of course look forward to future appearances at our Parliament's Criminal Justice Committee and to being held to account. Can I say to Audrey Nicholl, start by reiterating something that I say to Mr Rennie, that Police Scotland is one of the most scrutinised public services in Scotland, and that is entirely right. I will continue to work with the Scottish Police Authority, His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary in Scotland, the Police Investigations and Review Commissioner, as well as national and local parliaments and, of course, this Parliament to support and challenge Police Scotland to ensure that we maintain an excellent standard of policing for all our communities. And along with the investment of nearly £1.5 billion in policing in 2023 to 24, this coming financial year, I do expect to introduce the Police Complaints and Misconduct Handling Bill to Parliament later this year.
Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I welcome the Cabinet Secretary to her new position? The problem is two of her Justice predecessors hold two of the highest offices of government still, and many questions yet remain unanswered about this. The Cabinet Secretary said that call handling has improved, but the reality is last year hundreds of thousands of calls to Police Scotland went unanswered or were dropped by the caller. Can I ask around this revelation, and it is a scandal, I should add, has anyone gone back in time to review which of these calls that went into the ether, what happened to those calls, what was the exact consequence of not dealing with those calls, and more importantly, can we get categorical reassurance today from the new Cabinet Secretary that this practice did indeed end in 2015 and has not happened once in the time since then until now? There remains serious questions unanswered. Someone must pay the price for this scandal, Cabinet Secretary.
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I do indeed appreciate why Mr Green and other members have raised this matter today. It is, of course, a serious matter. Can I refer him, without repeating in full the earlier comments I made to other members about the explanation that has been given to the situation here, and it's that this call sign existed and that it was used when calls were at a peak so that they could be put into a holding system until they could be dealt with, and that Police Scotland say that they are clear that calls were not dropped due to this. But of course, as you would expect, I am due to be meeting with the Chief Constable shortly, and this will be one of many matters that will be on the agenda. And I would also, again, for brevity, Presiding Officer, refer to the several reports that have already been carried out on this matter, including the earlier reports that made a number of recommendations that covered issues of staff and systems and processes, and the follow-up report, in particular the 2018 report, that recognised the considerable priority and effort that had been made in this area, as well as the progress. Thank you.
Pauline McNeill.
I too would like to congratulate Angela Constance on her appointment to Cabinet Secretary for Justice. I ask if the Cabinet Secretary agrees that it is a very serious matter, because the call centre system was designed to redirect actual one-on-one calls to make the response times look better. And the BBC reported today that some of those calls did go unattended as a result of that. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree? She says she's not aware that any other practices in other parts of the force existed. But does she agree that Police Scotland should never allow pressures to meet certain responses and targets ever lead to any types of practices like this ever again? And will she ensure then that, since the Chief Constable who is leaving the service has pleaded with the Government to fund the service to ensure that 101, a vital public service, continues to be the best service it can be, can she assure the Chamber today that she will ensure that the 101 service will operate effectively and be adequately funded?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I think I have reiterated to members throughout this discourse this afternoon that I consider this a serious matter, albeit one of historical practice, but nonetheless it is imperative that we continue to govern, to scrutinise, to hold ourselves and each other to account, because it is absolutely imperative that there is the strongest possible confidence in our police force and all related practices. In terms of funding, I have already intimated that going forward we will invest nearly £1.5 billion in policing. In terms of the resource increase, that's an increase of 6.3%, an additional £80 million. And as Ms McNeill will appreciate, I will be scrutinising that budget with great care and detail as we move forward.
And Russell Finlay.
Thank you, and I also welcome the Cabinet Secretary to her new role. A senior police officer has told the BBC that he was instructed by Police Scotland to investigate this matter. He produced a report, but no one knows where that report is. Will the new Cabinet Secretary, when she does meet the Chief Constable, instruct or request a fresh search for this crucial document?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I again, as always, appreciate Mr Finlay's deep interest in our criminal justice system on this and a range of matters. I will indeed be meeting with the Chief Constable very shortly. I would, of course, say that in terms of the briefing I've received from my officials and the extensive questions that I have already put to them, that there has been 5 reports on issues in and around call handling thus far, and I would therefore urge members to go back, to look at those reports, to look at the recommendations that were made and to look at the progress that has been made. But of course my door is always open to any other supplementary information that needs to be drawn to my attention.